No way.
Have you ever wondered how the right information at the right time can change everything? Welcome to KMTV, where we showcase how knowledge management transforms our world. Today, I'm thrilled to have a true global expert in our studio, Obinna Richfield Anah. Having won the Knowledge Manager of the Year 2024 award by CILIP, the British Library and Information Association, he brings years of international experience and insights into knowledge management best practices. It is great to have you, Obinna. Please share with us the story of how you became interested in knowledge management.
I became interested in knowledge management because I realized at some point that knowledge management is an offshoot of library science, library and information science. And you see, in the university, I studied library and information science. And for me, it's beginning to look like something that has to do with destiny. Yeah. Because before studying library and information science, I wanted to do engineering. But then, when I was in the secondary school, I can remember I was made a library prefect. I wasn't supposed to be the library prefect because I was in primary 5, like we call it here. I had not even reached primary 6, but then I was appointed to become the library prefect. I don't know why. I handled that position for like 2 years, and during the 2 years, the school announced that they were not going to have a library master until I graduate from the school.
Okay.
So I graduated from the school, wrote the necessary exams to get into the university. I actually went to the first university where I was doing laboratory science technology. So, and then I wanted to study electrical electronics engineering. I had written the exams, I passed the exams, but for some reasons I didn't continue. So I had to relocate to another city where I had written another exam to study public law. But coincidentally, some things happened and I changed my mind. So I bumped into library science and I took the course, Library and Information Science, from the University of Maiduguri in Borno State, Nigeria. So do you know that I had finished studying the course and graduated before I remembered that I was once a library prefect?
Wow.
So imagine being in the university for 4 to 5 years, graduating, then you remember that, oh, this is exactly what I was doing before I even studied the course. So I began to aspire. During my research, I wrote a research about readership development. So I wanted to see how I can help people to increase their ability to read, to become more interested in reading books. So, and that was like the first of its kind of that research since the inception of the school. So the teachers did all their efforts to help me, my lecturers, and I did a very good research on readership development. So by the time I had finished this, like I was told, I was one of the first of my grade my levels who started working immediately after the university. So I bumped into someone who introduced me to an EU project on rural water. So I offered that I could do newsletters for them and share information and knowledge about what they're doing. So they gave me an assignment. I would travel to rural communities, interview beneficiaries of this function, of these interventions, and also those experts who are working on the field. And then I'll interview them. I'll come up with case studies, best practice, lessons learned. And I didn't know that these things were integral part of community development, especially the community development project. So I will pick up all these things from beneficiaries and experts. I will come back to the EU office and they will tell me, okay, this one is called best practice. This one is called case study. This one is called lessons learned, So I started learning those terminologies. So then after a while, another EU sister project saw my work, on the newsletters, and then gave me a very big opportunity. So while I was doing that, the woman who was the head of the program, the team leader at the time, she told me, I want you to keep at this, and I see that one day you are going to become an information officer for a very big organization.
Wow.
So I kept to it. I didn't want to shift anymore, so I stayed at it. And uh, lo and behold, after that project, I now got my first full-time job. So a position had been advertised by another UK aid project in Nigeria. They were into basic education. So they advertised the position of a communications and knowledge management specialist. So I was hearing knowledge management for the first time. And then when I looked at the job description, it was the same things I was doing on the EU project. So someone had called me also to say, oh, I saw this job. I think you can get it. Why not just give it a shot? So I applied for it. The interview was intense. There were some people who came from outside Nigeria, who interviewed for the job. And to be sincere, I only just had faith that I was going to get the job. But I didn't feel that, okay, maybe based on my qualifications, I could be picked, because when you walk into an office for the first time to have an interview, you see how everywhere is organized and you are feeling like, oh, am I supposed to be here? So after a month, they called me that I actually was the best of
Oh.
all the people they interviewed. And then they had interviewed that I was going to be covering the big state, and that was how I started. And so the first time I became communications and knowledge management specialist. I started writing impact stories of transforming basic education in Africa, in Kaduna State, Nigeria. So, and that was it. And as I was writing, because I like to tell stories, I like to communicate. So I really was very interested in it, that I could pick out new knowledge and share with people, and people could read my writings out there. So, and I had very good line managers. One, Richard Hansen from the UK, and then another one, Bankole from Nigeria. So they supported me a lot. There was a lot of mentoring, and that was how. And I had very good team members also cut across the country. So we were always working together, and there was a lot of interest for me, and that was where I continued. So it was under that same program I went for my first KM training. So I trained with the Knowledge Management Institute, Virginia. So Eric Wagner or something.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
popular name on KM. Yeah, so I had my first training with them, and that was it. I love knowledge management because it focuses on bringing out new knowledge, right? The new things. So you don't, the former libraries could be outdated. You find out people, if some libraries could be dusty, people are not interested in reading the old books and all that. But now with knowledge management, you see that you can curate new knowledge every time. And you can see that there are several perspectives to knowledge. Every individual has his own perspective to knowledge. So, and that's where the word experience sharing comes from. You see people tell their story and say, oh, I'm sharing my experience. So experiences differ from one person to the other, from one organization to the other, from one project to the other. And you find that within these experiences, there are embedded a lot of insights that can help others to improve what they are doing. So, I mean, knowledge management for me is like eating fresh food every day. Yeah.
Yes, I can. I share these views with you, and also there is just so many areas in knowledge management that are interesting. What's your favorite? What is the thing that you could do 24/7?
Yeah, knowledge management, the interest for me, first of all, is I don't know why I have found myself in a position where I'm always the one to come and pioneer a new assignment. You know? So being a self-starter is something that is of very big interest to me, because I can easily come up with ideas. even if I'm not if I'm knowledgeable about the field, I easily get inspired. I could come up with new ideas. I could be very creative about bringing up new things. So, and knowledge management has to do with organizing, right? Organizing knowledge, um, classifying them, making sure the right information and knowledge gets to the right person at the right time. So I could just sit down and think of, okay, what can I do to be able to create that process?
Hmm.
So I remember, like this organization I was telling you about, the EU funded project. That was the first newsletter they were doing. I started it. I thought of how we could get all the materials together. So I could go then pick their reports and then I'll tease out things. And by the time I present it to them, they're like, wow, we made a lot of mistakes. But then, even from our mistakes, we got a lot of recognitions at the same time. So, also, I could remember being the person who worked with the USAID team to set up the first indigenous online platform for water and sanitation community of practice in Nigeria. So it was a task that they wanted to have a learning platform where all the partners doing water supply and sanitation in Nigeria could come share knowledge. So all the projects can supply materials and it will be put on that online platform. And fortunately, they got me, and being always a self-starter, I was able to pull it through. It was a very successful project until we handed it over to another extended project. So, and then also here where I'm working at AMCOW, I'm also the one who has set up the AMCOW's Knowledge Hub, which is a continental platform with a vision to bring together a one-stop point for water and sanitation knowledge in Africa. So I also started that. So here and there, I've started new things, and that is one interesting aspect for me, being able to start new things. Then another aspect for me is that storytelling,
Hmm.
you know, and not so many people know that storytelling is a very key aspect of knowledge management, because knowledge management has a very big component of knowledge sharing. So if you have to share your knowledge, you have to be able to package it as stories so that it will be interesting. I know that some of the old books that we have that people get bored reading is because of the presentation. But today things have become more softened, and people can easily go online and spend hours without knowing that they are reading.
Hmm.
The time you spend online surfing, reading comments from people, stories, you use it to read a whole book. So, but because they are packaged as snippets of stories, it becomes more interesting, more engaging, and then gradually people are being built to become wiser in what they are doing. If you look at the kids of today, if you see a 3-year old child, you find out that there's so much the child knows that a 3-year old of 1980 wouldn't know, because they're engaging with stories online on YouTube, um, different applications on their devices and all that. So for me, that storytelling part is the key part, after setting up the platforms. So I've set up quite a few platforms, and I've also tried to introduce to several organizations platforms that can help them consolidate knowledge and be able to create access for the users. I remember when I started at AMCOW. AMCOW is a continental institution that a pioneer institution that champions issues on water under the African Union. So a lot of times, staff from the organization travel to attend conferences, engage with a lot of organizations that generate water and sanitation knowledge. So when I came here, I saw a lot of documents just left behind within their lockers, within their shelves in the offices, not organized. So the first thing I did was I pulled all of them together, consolidated them into about we had 1,700 volumes of
Wow.
information and knowledge materials from different organizations. Some are case studies, some are policy briefs, some are project reports. I put all these things together. Then I got some junior librarians. We were able to use the Library of Congress classification scheme and a blend of some local scheme we developed ourselves. And we classified and cataloged the materials. Then the organization AMCOW was able to buy some shelves, and we shelved all the documents, and then the put all the list of documents into a digital form. So that's how we started. Now that library is named after the first president of AMCOW,
Wow.
Mukhtar Shehu Shagari Resource Center. So, but it just started by picking all the books littered here and there in people's offices.
And what are the problems with water sanitization in Africa? Why is this a problem that you need to resolve?
Yeah, you see, water is very important to everyone. Whether you're an African or you're not an African, water is very important. And so many people don't know that water is not always the way you see it when you find it in a bottle you want to drink or in a glass. A lot of processes are involved to purify water. A lot of processes are involved to get water from one house to the other. You know, so it's a very knowledge intensive activity to produce water. And then knowing the value of water, water is used for so many things: agriculture, industrialization, water for food, water for transport, even bathing. I had a project recently during the Africa Water Week. We did a design of a banner, the use of water, and then we left a side of it plain and gave markers to attendees. So just write for us one of the uses of water that you know, and you can imagine the enormous information we got from there. So water is very, very important in its nature, right? So because of what people use water to do. But then also in Africa, um, we are yet to be very technologically advanced to be able to process the water that we have as much as we could. I remember, I think we have almost 88 rivers and lakes in Africa, you know, and some of these rivers, no matter what you do, they can never run dry, you know, but they are sources of water. Water is supposed to be accessed from there, purified, and then distributed to homes so that people can use them for whatever they're using them to do. And so um, now all the processes required to ensure that water gets to the users, um, being as extensive as they are, require a lot of knowledge. So that is why the water sector, to a very large extent, cannot do without knowledge management. You know, so and then there are also some places where you see that, like we call them transboundary water areas. Yeah, you see countries sharing water boundaries. You just like in normal life, you see there's a lot of competition when two people find themselves sharing something. You need to be able to enlighten them that instead of competing over this thing or fighting over it, you can come together and make a better use of it. So all that also needs a lot of injection of knowledge, injection of experiences, understanding to help them to collaborate with one another. And also there are other um, areas of the society where there's no water at all. So where there is no river, and you see that you need some technology to be able to maybe access the groundwater, which we say is invisible, making invisible visible. How do you access groundwater? What are the rules and regulations, policies that need to be put in place to ensure that the aquifers are not exhausted? Because the water that you have underground are stored in the aquifers, and these aquifers sometimes can be dry. So sometimes also they are recharged through rainfall and also other some artificial means. But where they are not properly recharged, and they run dry, what happens to water supply?
Mm.
So people begin to lack water. So all these things need a lot of knowledge to be able to ensure that we combat water scarcity properly, to be able to be sure that we have the appropriate policies that will guide the usage of such water. Like in Nigeria, it rains, like in some areas in Nigeria, it rains from January to December. But when you go to countries like Namibia, like this year, I know that Namibia had maybe once rainfall for once, one day.
Wow.
You go to places like Egypt. Egypt is like the one of the driest countries globally. So, but you see, if they don't have enough knowledge, they will not be able to harness the water they have underground, or the water they have in the rivers, and then they will not be able to supply their people with adequate water to live and to grow their agriculture as they should.
Wow, this is so insightful for me. I'm not familiar with this topic, but I guess this is very much linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well. Um,
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, how do you capture the knowledge? Who do you get it from? Where do you store it? How do you share it? How do you know that this is reliable knowledge that people can use? So, can you give like a practical example how you do this in Africa?
Okay, I would use the existing mechanisms that are established already in Africa. In Africa, when you talk about water resources and sanitation, there are already existing mechanisms like apart from an organization like the African Union Commission, which deals with a lot of branches of development, and then water is one of them, and then or maybe apart from AMCOW, which focuses more on water resource management, water supply and sanitation. There are other organizations like the River and Lake Basin organizations. These are the organizations that are in charge of those water resources, the rivers, the lakes, which are sources of water, you know. And then, like I told you, the processes involved in getting this water extracted, purified, distributed properly, you know, each organization may not have the same experience. So, which means each organization that can come up with different knowledge, different insights, how they manage their own resources. So we also have the regional economic communities like the ECOWAS and those in the north, south, and central Africa. So they all, through their processes, generate different facets of knowledge.
Mhm.
So we have engagements with them from time to time. We have the sub-regional um, ministerial consultations. We have different kinds of meetings. And during these kinds of meetings, different organizations are given opportunities to make presentations of what they're doing. Some make presentations of their areas of strength, their current projects. Some make presentations of the challenges they are facing in case we want to come up with um, continental or national priorities that will form part of policies. So as they share all this knowledge, um, we do some element of documentation. And then also some of them within themselves, they generate knowledge. And then all I need to do, someone like me, is to get access to that knowledge and then put it on my platforms so that others can have access to them. So institutions in Africa, to a very large extent, rely on African Ministers Council on Water for such kind of information and also direction on where water and sanitation is facing at every given time. We have AMCOW has these two um, very big conferences that happen once in 2 years. We have the Africa Water Week conference. We just concluded the Africa Water Week, the ninth edition of the Africa Water Week. We just concluded in Cairo in October.
Wow.
And last year in November, we had the Africa Sanitation and Hygiene Conference, which is commonly referred to as Africa SAN Conference.
Mm-hmm.
So now in these conferences, we have different organizations and experts. They apply for sessions to convene sessions with their friends, their partners. So now during these sessions, we provide them with templates that can enable them to drop a record of all the knowledge that is shared, the impacts they are making, and the lessons they've learned. So, and this kind of collections help us to be able to document knowledge coming every 2 years from the sector. So that's also one aspect. Another aspect is sometimes you could, like I mentioned earlier, organizations actually document what they're doing. So when they document what, like AMCOW, for instance, also has certain documents that it generates, like on a yearly basis or once in every 2 years. We have the Africa Water and Sanitation Sector Monitoring Report. So these are reports that we generate after collecting data from the member states. We collect data and information from member states, and then we also have these member states tell us stories of how they are able to run their assignments, and these are documented as case studies and also introduced into the report. So the same way we also do for the Africa SAN report. So we have this declaration that was made some years back, call it the Ngor Declaration on Accelerating Water Supply, Sanitation and Hygiene. So now we are monitoring that declaration to ensure that every commitment of the heads of states and governments under the African Union are being achieved. So every year we take a round of data collection from member states, and then we gather information, analyze the data, capture case studies, and we publish. So these are some of the ways we gather knowledge. But then also we're improving. We have done quite a lot in trying to generate our internal knowledge by developing some documentaries. I've done documentaries to explain how African Ministers Council on Water was created, so that it will just not be hanging in the air or shadow boxing. So when somebody wants to know about AMCOW, now you can have a documentary on YouTube that tells you who are the people that created AMCOW, how was it created, and all that. So, and because it's a knowledge thing, I try to be as in-depth as possible to provide the hows of what has been done. So also did a documentary on the Africa SAN conference, how it started, why it started, and what it has achieved. We've done documentary on the Africa Water Week conference, why we started it, how we started, and what has been achieved so far. And some of the government-led decisions that have emerged from these meetings. I remember also when I joined AMCOW, one of the key things I did was to try to make sure that information about AMCOW is out there. So I got some experts to put AMCOW on Wikipedia, so that when you go on Google and type, you will be able to see, okay, who is AMCOW, when was it formed, what does it do, what are some of the things it has accomplished, So just here and there, making sure that every available opportunity we have, we can share knowledge. But then there's a central knowledge hub that we have built, and now we're expanding it. So it's like an online library where we can put documents in PDFs, introduce documents through URLs, maybe documents that were not developed by AMCOW. If we get the URLs from our partners, we introduce those to the platform, and then they are categorized. We recently we've worked with the National Library of Nigeria to come up with a classification scheme, which we have used to classify those resources. And also we are using the application programming interface APIs to see how we can link one resource online library and the other to AMCOW's platform, so that it becomes a central hub, like I mentioned earlier. When you want some information on water and sanitation, instead of you to go from one platform to the other, if you come to AMCOW, maybe you have the advantage of having a consolidated set of information from maybe 4 to 5 platforms just on one spot. It reduces the time you spend in searching for information, and also to an extent helps you to streamline. Okay, you are looking for information that is related to water and sanitation in Africa, and
And do you use Microsoft to store this information, or what kind of IT platform do you
yeah,
use?
this is a web-based open access platform that was built from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we use Microsoft for internal knowledge management issues. But then on the external, where we want anybody can have access to them, we just built something that's like a website, but is more of a library.
Ah, okay. And do you feel that all this work being centralized also helped create a taxonomy for water sanitization, like a controlled vocabulary that, yeah?
Yeah, that's the future. That's why we're beginning to look at. That's why we're beginning to collaborate with libraries.
Mm-hmm.
So because libraries are custodians of established taxonomies of knowledge, and then it covers every branch of knowledge. So for us, the water sector, um, we are trying to see how by the time we have up to 1 million volumes of resources on the knowledge hub, you can see at that time you are becoming a leader in managing water sector knowledge, right? So and your taxonomies can now be something that others can leverage or learn from. So we're making sure at this time that the documents are properly classified into the right themes, thematic areas. And that is what will help to build that taxonomy. So if you come on the new updated platform, you will see that there are resources on hydrology as a general theme. And then you break down, there are resources specifically on groundwater, you know, and then also on groundwater, there are resources specific to policy briefs. So we're breaking them down gradually so that in the coming years, the platform will be able to now evolve with these taxonomies, and having a lot of resources on them.
Do you use any AI on the top of this?
No, we haven't introduced AI, but now that AI is becoming a household name, is the talk of the town. People are beginning to learn to improve their knowledge of AI. We are seeing that it's an essential route to follow because it will help us also to make some things easy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so as also like we are trying to see how we can integrate AI into the search facilities and also the language facilities. Like our knowledge hub runs on 4 languages: English, Arabic, French, and Portuguese. So AI is one of the tools that we're considering to see how we can use to improve the language, because usually what we're doing is we do some how will I call it, manual. We get translators to translate certain instructions, and then we embed as a way of internationalizing the platform. But now we're trying to see how AI can be much better than just a Google language facility. Yeah.
Exactly. So moving also into semantics and recognizing, yeah, the content in the questions. Do you collect knowledge from tribes who don't speak these languages?
For now, we haven't started collecting from those tribes, but one of the things we have done recently is that we have sectioned the platform such that knowledge coming in from different countries can be categorized under those countries as sources. So when you come to the platform, maybe in the next 3 years, if you come to the platform and click on Algeria, you can see all the resources that originated from Algeria. If you click on Cameroon, you see all the resources that originated from authors from Cameroon. So we're working on that to make sure that these resources from different countries are classified according to their origins, but not yet the local languages.
How does identifying the countries help your work? Like, okay, this knowledge article is coming from Nigeria or Algeria or another African country. How does it help your work?
It helps in the sense that sometimes you may not know which country that has interest in learning from the other. So maybe as a Nigerian, I may be more interested in learning from Ghana than learning from Algeria, which is far away in North Africa. Well, Ghana is also within the same Western African region, and there's a lot of cultural issues that we may be sharing in common. So it helps for someone to easily go to a place of interest. Okay, I'm from West Africa, so let me just check information about countries in the Western Africa region. So, and vice versa.
And what do you see as a cultural issue that hinders knowledge management?
Okay, I'll give you an example. I just remembered when I was working in those local communities, like I told you, I would go from one house to the other with my list of beneficiaries. Sometimes, like in northern Nigeria, as a young man, I am not permitted to enter into a house where there are harem women.
Okay.
Yeah, so some women at the point of marriage, they have an understanding that you don't have to face other men. So there's a way you can wear your veils to cover and all that. It's part of the Islamic traditions too. So for me as a man, if I want to capture case studies, I would have that hindrance to be able to do that. Unless maybe I have another partner who is going with me, possibly a lady. And even as a lady, she may have to be able to dress like them, although not in all cases. And also as modernization is coming, some of those culture are no longer becoming very extreme, but they are still there, and you have to respect them.
Yes, of course.
And also, especially where religion plays a very huge role, you have to also there are certain questions you don't ask women. So for instance, if I'm capturing a case study on reproductive health,
yes,
there are certain discussions I cannot have with a woman who is a harem woman, who is not supposed to face other men, who is not supposed to be talking to another young man who maybe does not understand her culture. So, and these things hinder knowledge collection, and also even how the knowledge is transmitted from one person to other can be affected.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So basically, you overcome this by going with a female.
You go with a female
colleague
that has to cover her hair,
and
she goes in there and then ask the questions properly the way she's supposed to ask them. So, and you know that by the time she's getting the answers, she may come and report it not exactly the way she got it. There's always distortion in information between one person and the other, right?
Yes.
So that is so those are some very simple issues that can come. Another example is okay, let's say issues of vaccination. But for some religious beliefs and also some cultural issues, you find that people may not like to get vaccinated. So And all these things, we try to respect them as much as possible, and they all affect knowledge management work. Yeah.
How do you explain to people that you are trying to create a case study for knowledge management?
Yeah, first of all, if for instance, if I'm working as a consultant, to go collect knowledge from some people who are benefiting from an intervention, I
Mm-hmm.
need to I need to communicate appropriately to the providers of the intervention, and they know how to engage with their beneficiaries to tell them that on such and such a day, you're going to be having someone coming to your house, and these are the things that he would be asking you about. I remember I had an encounter some time ago. I had gone to collect information from somewhere, and then I decided to take pictures. And before you know it, I saw um, a lot of people surrounding me and wanted to beat me up. So
Oh,
so I had to start explaining that my intentions are not to malign or show a negative picture of them and all that. And it took me like 1 hour to get out of that place.
phew.
And I didn't just go alone. I had come with a researcher, a lady who came to conduct a research on those angles of the society. So, and she came from the UK, and I was assigned to support her to go to the field. And it wasn't a very sweet experience.
Yeah, I can imagine it might have been really scary for her. Um,
And for
and
me too.
for you too, yes,
I
exactly,
think I
exactly,
noticed I noticed I was more scared than she was, because I was not just thinking about myself, I was also
exactly.
thinking about her. And also I noticed that her mind was already made up, like, um, this is what I came to do. Whatever happens, I'm fine, you know.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yes, yes, when you need to protect someone else, then the stakes are higher.
Exactly, exactly.
How do you how do you get support for knowledge management from leaders or investors or anybody? Do people understand knowledge management, or you explain your business case not mentioning it that this is okay a knowledge management initiative?
Yeah, first of all, there is knowledge explosion right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere is full of knowledge. And one of the advantages of that is more people will want to create more knowledge with what is available.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then another disadvantage is there's tendency for people to abuse knowledge, and maybe it becomes so common and they're no longer interested. So when you see someone's trying to gather information on a particular um, field, and you just, instead of going to meet sector actors or experts, you say, I'll just check it on Google and I'll find what I want. And sometimes you may not get as in-depth information as you should get. So knowledge management is still one of the things I would like to do. Like I told you about the project I wrote in the university, readership improvement. One of the things I also want to do in the future in the field of knowledge management is to be able to sell knowledge management as a business, demonstrate the value proposition, um, possibly lean on insights like what you have on the knowledge and the business model canvas, you know, to deal with it as a business, because information is actually big business.
Yes.
And that will require you to convince people of why they should, deal with knowledge and information. But a lot of people who have that understanding already, like those in the telecommunications industry, those in the political class, they know what it means to have data, especially when they are campaigning and they want to communicate to the mass of people. But then also in areas like the the military, in areas like um, those who are into transportation, especially by air, you find out that there's need for proper knowledge management to reduce risks and mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of documentation that should be done. There's a lot of following of lessons learned and all that. And those that are in very big businesses like real estate, hospitality. Imagine if you want to build an hotel like the ones you have in Dubai, with skyscrapers. You will take knowledge seriously more than a man who is just building a bungalow by the roadside. So he will just tell himself, I don't need an architect. But the one who is building a skyscraper knows that if I don't involve an architect and a building engineer, this building may collapse. So the bigger the need, the more the interest in knowledge. So I see that organizations that want to be serious have to go for knowledge management. If you don't want to go for knowledge management, it just means that you don't want to be serious. You don't want to be very big. Because if you want to be very big, then you need knowledge to be sustained. You need knowledge to be able to establish your leadership and also to claim your space for in case of competitive advantages.
Yes, I read somewhere in a statistic that organizations who don't do knowledge management go extinct. 60% of them are going to go extinct by 2030 because everything becomes so knowledge intensive, and
Exactly.
people or organizations still focus on processes and technology, but the real assets are the people and their knowledge and their experience. And this is what you can
Exactly.
really build on and innovate and try new things. You know, I'm really interested in all these high reliability organizations and high reliability activities like water sanitization, for instance, or you mentioned airlines, where if you don't manage your knowledge, then it creates
The
a
risk
risk
is
for
high.
other people's lives or nature. But these organizations, according to knowledge management literature, they have different problems. Like, for instance, there is people in these organizations don't like to simplify. They are afraid of taking accountability. There is a huge fear of failure. Did you experience this in water sanitization activities?
Yeah, for us in Africa, a lot of organizations are beginning to see the benefit of knowledge management. Um, some are still yet to understand it. Knowledge management means a lot of different things to different people. Some want to have a knowledge management officer who will just come and document, information and data. Some actually think that knowledge management is about data, but it's not.
No.
So, so they are still trying to understand it. They are still trying to do what others are doing. But I think it's by copying you can actually learn a lot more also. So it's all allowed. Yeah.
Yes.
There's something I wanted to say. In this era of climate change, disaster, adaptation, um, there is there is something about knowledge that is missing. So many people are forgetting that when a climate change disaster happens, a lot of knowledge is missing.
Yes.
For instance, when there is flooding, some experts living within that area who die go with their knowledge. Some museums and libraries that collapse and are carried away by flood get missing.
Yes.
So, under the climate change era, we have to intensify on knowledge management for creation, for processing, and for sharing, so that we increase the velocity of knowledge, that someone from somewhere can easily have a grasp of what another expert somewhere knows before you look for the expert and don't find him or her, or before you look for that museum or library and don't find it. So it's for me, it's what will I call it? It's something to think about by the climate change community. So to start building projects that have knowledge management as integral parts of them.
Mm.
if they really want to preserve the world. Because if we say that these climate issues are going to be increasing, which means we're going to continue to experience the disadvantages that they bring along. So, and one of those disadvantages that I'm looking at right now is the loss of knowledge. So,
Yes.
amidst all the lots of knowledge that is being generated in this phase of our lives on Earth,
Mm.
there's also a tendency that we could be losing a lot more because of climate change issues. And someone has to rise up to begin to promote this idea to see that that does not happen anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you because we experience climate change already, but you need to many times floods happen because someone lost the knowledge how to manage the river around this area, or
Exactly.
someone lost the knowledge that, for instance, in this area you should not build buildings.
Exactly.
So what you were talking also about Dubai and everything, you need to know how to deal with the sand. Many people
Hmm.
don't know that Dubai imports sand from other
Hmm.
countries. So there's just so much complexity around it.
And it's only knowledge that will demystify those complexities.
Exactly.
I know you're interviewing me because of the award, but I think we should have more discussions like this. Maybe once in every month we come up
Yeah.
with something,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
let it be an initiative that has to continue. Yeah.
Why do you feel that, Obinna?
Yeah, because there's a lot that we have said casually that so many
Hmm.
people know. And I think for me, I'm going to be seeing it as a partnership that should continue.
Oh, I
You
would
never,
love that. I don't interview you because of the award. I interview you because the award didn't say what you did, and I was genuinely interested because this
oh,
is what you, as you say, this is storytelling. I have never been outside of Europe. I would like to understand what is happening in Africa, and I know that I cannot rely on my imagination. I need to talk to people who live there and who do it there.
mhm.
So, yeah,
Okay. Now, if you want to know what I did
yes.
that that led to the award, first of all, apart from uh, apart from the platform that I have supported to set up, I had mentioned that I have supported to set up the first indigenous community of practice
Yes.
on water and sanitation in Nigeria, and also an online learning platform under a USAID project, you know. And then I have also introduced something in the sector in Africa where we're raising knowledge management focal points from all the 55 countries we have, where we're intending to raise two. So countries have been mandated to nominate two persons, one female, one male. So currently we have about 20 countries which have nominated about 38 focal points. These
Wow.
focal points are also experts in their own fields in the water sector, but then we're now going to train them with knowledge management skills so that they will be able to communicate the
Hmm.
knowledge that is generated in the water sector in Africa. This is linked to one of the demands of the Africa Water Vision 2025, which calls for improving water wisdom by increasing countries' ability to receive and share knowledge. So the whole idea is to prepare them to be able to receive, to be able to process, and then share knowledge so that knowledge gets to the right person at the right time. If we're able to achieve that, can say that the continent has improved in its water wisdom, and then we take better decisions, we do projects in a better way, and we achieve more results. That's the whole idea. So it's more of a systemic thinking that I will touch this button and then it hits the next button and the next button, and this is going to be the ripple effect. So that's what we're looking at. So the advantages we'll begin to see in the next 4 or 5 years if we do these things properly. And then I have done the same thing in other places prior to my current place of work. So I remember developing capacity of about 24 officers within the Universal Basic Education Board in one of the states in Nigeria. And they later became consultants in knowledge management for UNICEF within that same state. So I try to introduce knowledge management skills to people so that they can also do knowledge management work to improve productivity within their space of work. And when you improve productivity, you see that you make more impact.
Actually wanted to ask about knowledge focal points in the different countries, because I remember that from your award that you set this up as well. Why is it one man and one woman?
Yeah, first of all, we wanted to be gender sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think that's basically it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you feel that there is an advantage, or it is just about equality?
There's an advantage in having both men and women bringing their ideas into society development, right? Because um, we've come to find out that in some places where our cultures don't allow women to speak, we get to lose a lot. It's just like if you run an office and maybe you micromanage people, and then there are staff you don't like. Sometimes the staff you don't like are the most intelligent.
Yeah.
And then you find out that you keep running your programs, and then you lose all the ideas that they are supposed to bring on the table, and yet you are paying them. so
I,
so
I like the analogy.
you become a clueless leader. Yeah, you're paying people, and then you're not using what you're paying them for. You're not enjoying it.
I just really like working in diverse teams, because many times we women are more cautious, but we like sharing, or we are easy to communicate things with, while men are very many times. I really believe in teams that are not homogeneous, and this also means nations. Like, I work for the European Union with several nationalities, and I really like it that, one day in one moment I hug an Italian, and the second moment I talk to someone from Northern Europe with 1 meter between
Exactly.
us. There is always
Exactly.
differences, and this is so
Exactly.
beautiful.
Exactly. It helps you to enjoy the whole world in one spot, right?
Exactly. I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the future for knowledge management in Africa?
Yeah, the future for knowledge management in Africa. I think that when big organizations that are currently doing knowledge management promote that aspect of their work effectively, it can lead to more organizations integrating knowledge management into their work. For now, I may not be able to say exactly what the future might look like, but with people like us, I know of other young people who are really promoting knowledge management in the continent. Some of them are my friends, especially in Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a very good job in Kenya. I used to attend some of the knowledge cafes, and you see that maybe in 1 month you have 2 knowledge cafes or 3 coming from Kenya. I like what they are doing. And I join those cafes and I see that there are a lot of Nigerians attending, a lot of people from different countries. So if we continue to promote knowledge management, I think that it will be embraced. And if it's embraced, it will change the paradigm, because already here we have a lot of difficulties in terms of having readership within the libraries. But now knowledge management is more than just reading. It incorporates all the facets of communication, right? Communication is a big tool for knowledge management. So I see it becoming something big. I personally have some projects I would like to carry out on knowledge management. I see that knowledge management is going to become known and it's going to be celebrated. Um, in some organizations, you find out that it's like an afterthought. And even when budgeting is done, the budget for knowledge activities are lower. But then it's all because of the awareness, the level of awareness of the value that knowledge management brings. And you know, the word value is so much attached to knowledge management because knowledge management actually showcases the value. It brings the value of the work done. Yeah. So I remember Eric Wagner said something when we started the knowledge management training. He said, "Why do you need knowledge management?" He said, "Every organization has a process, and knowledge is the only thing that drives organizational processes."
Yes.
He said, "If you don't have knowledge, you cannot drive an organization's process." So that's why you need knowledge management. And for me, that's excellent.
I agree. I fully agree. How do we explain the difference to people between data and information and knowledge management?
Yeah, data is just those piece of numbers, um, unstructured. 5 houses collapsed.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you come and say information. 5 houses collapsed in Lagos. It's an information.
Yes.
The knowledge is why did they collapse?
I agree. This is when you add the experience of the people.
Yes. 5 houses collapsed because their foundations were not strong. The knowledge is if you build stronger foundations, you would have longer lasting houses.
Yes. Yeah, this is why it drives. Yeah, this is why how it drives processes. And then we have the wisdom. What is water wisdom?
Water wisdom is okay, I have 2 million people in my country, and we have only 2 rivers, and we need all of them to have access to water. So, and I learned that if I put together a policy on how we can share groundwater in my country, all these citizens will have access to water. So wisdom now is that thing you learned, go and do it. Then I go develop a policy. I sensitize the people about the policy. And then I begin to implement the policy. Then I'm a wise person.
Wisdom is so beautiful.
Wisdom is that you're doing it. You know, so many times we just say all the things, make presentations, talk, write, and we don't do anything. So wisdom is turning all those things to action.
That's very interesting that you say, because this is also that you learn something and maybe you can use it for other things like water pollution, and we talk about air pollution, and then we can use similar principles, not the knowledge and the in-depth detail, but the mechanism how we work with it.
Exactly. And you know, that is why they say knowledge is practicable. If you communicate something that cannot be practiced, it's not knowledge. So knowledge tells you how you do it. Like one of the knowledge tools that comes to my mind is, for instance, you buy an electric iron and you have a manual. That's knowledge. That is serious knowledge embedded in those manuals.
Yes.
But you know that so many people don't read their manuals, right? They even buy phones and they don't read the manuals.
I know.
That is pure knowledge in that document.
Yeah, many people's experience.
Some recent textbooks now, they show you case studies. They'll tell you something and then they say, there's a case study. in London, this happened, and this was done. This was the challenge. This was the action that was taken, and this was the result. That's knowledge. So if you take it, you can practice it somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's universal. I would like to say thank you for your time today. I'm happy that I followed up on my instinct that I want to learn more, because this was absolutely amazing, this discussion with you. I learned so much about areas that I don't know, and how you are managing knowledge management is really inspirational. So again, really, really congratulations to your award. Absolutely deserved it. Very, very proud of you, and very, very proud of being your peer. And keep doing what you are doing. And yeah, we will talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you for
so.
bringing me on this show and finding value in the things that I have shared. I hope to share more with you as the days go.